Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hello. Does that
How's it
work?
going?
Yeah.
Yes, it's great. Yeah, it's so good to see you. Oh, it's reconnecting. There we go.
We got
You're
it?
back.
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks
How's
everyone for
things?
tuning in. My guest this week is Patrick Flanaghan. Things are good. Yeah. Patrick is the principal cor anglais of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. He studied at the Royal Academy of Music in London, and in the UK, he has appeared as guest principal cor anglais with the London Philharmonic Orchestra, the BBC National Orchestra of Wales, CBSO, and the Aurora Orchestra. So thank you so much for joining me today, Patrick.
Over there, and good evening if anyone's over in Europe.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into it. I wanted to also mention for those of y'all watching, Patrick is the first short scrape reed maker and player that we've had on the show. So I'm excited to pick your brain about your reeds. Yeah.
Okay. So we had a chat the other day about a few
Yeah.
things, and I bored the pants of you. So how do you want to
Not
how
at
do you want
all.
to how do you want to start? How's the best way for you?
Yeah, let's first I guess it would be good to talk about kind of your basic setup. So the cane brand that you like and the gouge that you use.
Okay. So I play predominantly on alio cane, on English horn, and also on oboe. And occasionally I will also use Rigotti. Um,
Okay.
for English horn, I use a Mikkel gouging machine, which is he died a couple of years ago, but the company is still run by relatives. And yeah,
Nice.
it's the go-to machines over here. So I use a 12 bed for English horn and a 10.5 for oboe.
Okay. Nice. Cool. And then what about your kind of the shapes that you use and the staples that you use?
So shapers again, I use from Mikkel religiously. Basically, all my kit is from Mikkel. Um, for the English
Nice.
horn, I use an 8.4, which is 8.4 millimeters across the top. So I don't know if you can see, and it's just on a basic
Yeah.
handle. And then I use a 7.3 for the oboe and a 7.6 on Demore. So they all have similar dimensions. And yeah, I haven't
Okay.
changed for
Nice.
about 10 years on any of them. But I used to use RDG
Yeah.
minus two, as we talked about the other day. And yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
Nice.
that was like a
Yeah.
bucket for me to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's a pretty rare
Um,
shape here for people to use. Yeah.
well, I think it's great. It works very well with
Yeah.
a Chirugi 2 staple for the UK to play at 440. So it's quite a common
Okay. Nice.
combination here. But yeah, I also use Chirugi 2 for English horn because I love the
Nice.
extension on the bottom. And then I always use a bit of tubing to keep it steady on the crook or the bocal. And I
Nice.
use
Yeah.
Chirugi 2
And it
on oboe as well.
nice.
Yeah, go for it.
Nice. Yeah, you said that those are pretty similar to Luray staples, right?
They are the same as the Luray, the dimensions and the build. So whether or not people pay more or less for them, it's a kind of a question of taste. I have a couple of colleagues who swear by the Loret ones, that it's a higher quality of brass or cork. But I've played on both, and if the cane is good, they both work fantastically. So I
Yeah.
think it's one of those ones that what it
Nice.
comes down to is how
Cool.
you've made the reed.
And yeah, definitely. Yeah. And one thing that really struck me about our conversation was just how consistent you keep everything, which I think is really important. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your consistency in your process.
Okay, so I'm a great believer in the percentages of reed making and controlling the percentages. So it's
Yeah.
it's about, yeah, if you're going to make reeds, you gouge 10 pieces, for instance, to the same, hopefully for English horn for me about 67. Then I will hardness test them and select the pieces that are at the hardness that I would like to use, which on my machine is about 8, which I think is 13 on most others. Don't ask why my machine reads differently.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then it's a question of trying to make sure that all the pieces of cane, I mean, we tried this the other day on the camera, and I'm useless at this stuff, but the cane, we should hopefully be flat. So yeah, you can see that that one is kind of nicely long,
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
because the straighter the cane is, the better the aperture will be on the finished reed. And then tying
Yeah.
on, I have, or winding, I think as you guys call it, I have a slightly different
Mm.
method. So once I've got the piece of gouge cane, I soak it for about 24 hours in room temperature water. And then I will shape it and then put it back in the water for about another 24 hours. And then I will tie it on. And it's at this stage that
Nice.
I leave them for a minimum of a week. Because
Yeah.
I find that after the cane has been gouged and shaped and tied on, it's had a lot of trauma in its young life by then. And I think
Yes.
the longer you can leave it, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's what it is. It's trauma for the wood, and I think the longer you can then
Yeah,
leave it
definitely.
settled, the better the result. The cane will be completely dried out. It will have got some of its form back. Because when it's wet, it's obviously compresses and it's not as structurally sound as it would be otherwise. And then, yeah, it's at that stage after about a week that if I need to, I will start making the reeds, and if not, I will just leave them in the box for as long as possible.
Nice.
I think one
That's
other thing
awesome.
I did skip
Yeah. I've
was that we talked about
yeah.
when I gouge the cane, when I've
Go ahead.
selected
Sorry.
it, I will, once I've taken the slice out of the tube, I will pre-gouge it, and then I will leave that on a table down, so kind of that side down, and I will leave it there for
Okay.
probably
Yeah.
2 or 3 days just to check that the cane has settled and isn't warped and isn't kind of that way or that way too much. I know the kind of
Yeah.
from sight what I'm happy with, or what's
Yeah.
acceptable, and then beyond that, it will not make the cut. So since we spoke, I had 25 bits that look nice. I've ended up with 13 that might be useful.
Okay.
So yeah,
Nice. Yeah, that's one thing I really liked about our conversation as well was kind of your emphasis on time and the way that changes the cane, right? And I think
yeah,
that's a very often a value like a variable that we overlook here in the US. We just kind of try and make them really quick and make them work, but um,
yeah,
yeah, I actually earlier this year I tried tying some and letting them sit, and I've made some really good reads on the ones that I let sit. So I
yeah.
definitely think there's something to that. Yeah,
There is. It's something that I did kind of joke about with you the other day. Is that having tried to watch a few of these videos of yours to kind of understand a few more of the
yeah,
American terminologies, I did chuckle at this kind of 5 or 10 minute read business, or whatever. 20 minute, I
yeah,
can't remember. And
yeah. 20-minute read. Yeah,
yeah, 20
yeah,
minute read, that's it. And
Yeah.
I mean, for me, if I made a 20-minute read, it's going to play for 20 minutes. It's,
Yeah.
I kind of feel that the length you get out of a read is kind of the almost the amount of time you give it in the first place. And from personal experience, having been a student where you have an exam the next day or you're playing to your peers and you just want to sound good, there's just that temptation to tie something on,
Yeah.
scrape the hell out of it, and just hope upon hope. Whereas, yeah, if you can get some kind of routine and planning into it and just get a kind of conveyor belt that just moves a little bit more steady, then
Yeah.
from my experience, the results are much better and much more even because, yeah, you can kind of tell from the feel of the reed that it's going to last longer when it's more stable in the first place. I think we've all been there that cane is a bit soft or a bit hard and it just doesn't feel right. And then you persist. Whereas, yeah, with a hardness tester, which we can talk about in a minute, that helps take a bit of that out in the fact that you can narrow down your selection from kind of that to about that, which means that you do have more
Yeah.
wastage, but you have more consistent
Yeah.
reads. So yeah,
Yeah. And that's what we all want, right? Is consistency. Yeah. We want
yeah.
those good reads. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Um,
that's the aim,
yeah. Yeah.
and that's the other thing is, one thing that has come up regularly is, how do you go approach making a read or what do you look for? And I don't make a read with the instrument. My whole process is separate from the instrument. I will do it purely on the feel of the reed. And when I'm happy with that, then I will put it in the instrument. And as long as it feels right, normally the end result is the same because if I can play loud and quiet and it's in tune and the notes speak, then yeah, then we're happy and that's that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
I love that. Yeah.
yeah, and I just kind of feel there's a lot of,
Yeah.
particularly this year or this last, 12, 13 months that everyone's been experiencing, I kind of feel that I really feel it for people that get the opportunity to play as much. And then when you do have to play, you've kind of lost that feeling of what is a good read. So people are going straight back to what sounds good rather than what actually works and can
Yeah.
enable you to play how you want to. And that thing, one has their own
Yeah.
sound. And, I've played on a read that felt really comfortable, but I didn't think the sound was great. And you can lean over at the end of a rehearsal and just, ask someone that you trust, how did that sound? And they,
Oh, it cut out for a minute. You said they probably haven't noticed. Oh no, he dropped out. Hopefully, he will come back soon. Yeah, but if anyone has any questions about short scrape reads or about long scrape reads or the differences between them, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll answer them. There you are.
is that back? Sorry about that. Do not know what's
Yes.
happened.
Yeah, that's okay. It looks clearer now.
Where did I cut out?
You cut out. You're talking about playing on a reed that maybe didn't feel quite as good to you, but you would lean over to your colleagues and ask them, and they would say, "That's about where I cut out."
So sorry, it just for me it cut out again. What?
Oh no. Uh, they said that sometimes when you're playing a reed in rehearsal, it doesn't feel great to you, but your colleagues might not notice the difference, right?
Yeah. So um, yeah, I might not feel that the sound is what I want it, but if I've got the response, the pitch, and the dynamic, quite often to them it sounds the same because it's only us that have the kind of knowledge of the nuance that we're looking for or the exact sound. But quite often we have our sound, and that will be the same basically on any material. If you have, I mean, you guys have been making videos whilst, during lockdown. I'm pretty sure that whatever reed
Yeah,
you've ended up playing on, you kind of sound to other people the same,
yeah,
no?
yeah. I would, yeah, I
And I
would
think
argue so.
it's
And I've
that
had
kind
teachers
of,
tell me in the past, yeah. I was gonna say, I've had
yeah,
teachers tell me like, no matter what reed you're playing, you're always gonna sound like you.
yeah, it is. And that's the thing. It's,
Yeah,
we all have our individual sound, and it's making a reed that allows us to use
yeah,
that voice how we want it. Um, yeah. So if you're just thinking, there's a couple of things around tying on or winding that
yeah.
we did differently. So I obviously didn't prepare this. I've only got that same bit of Demore cane as the other day.
Yeah.
Um, do I? So one thing that I've never understood with American reeds is why you cross the blades. And yeah, you kind of think if everyone ties on, then if you kind of do, oh, it's kind of aligned, tie on reed. So I use, it's very environmentally unfriendly. I use lovely old fashioned plastic straw and I cut off a bit and then I will try and put it on this bit of cane, which is still dry. Um, I will put it around it. Can you see that tiny bit of yellow straw?
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, that's great.
um, yeah, and then I would tie them from there because you can then put it straight onto a staple and then it holds itself nicely in place. And then you can see where you have to bind until, and then, well,
Oh, cut out there for a second.
oh God. Um, I might have to move to another room if this is going to keep.
Okay.
Where did I cut out?
So I saw that it keeps it there on the staple, and then it cut out.
Okay, so yeah, the bit of straw helps the reed to stay in place, and then it makes it easy when you're tying on to see um, where the tube is, and
Yeah,
it makes it much easier to line up against the staple. So I would recommend that as well for you guys tying on where you end up crossing the blade because
yeah,
the aim is when you tie on, um, when you have the piece of cane, it's very rare on an oboe, for instance, that the whole 7.5 centimeters is 10.5 diameter. It's quite often that
right.
one end is
Yeah,
maybe 10.4 and the other end is 10.6. Small differences, but everyone has a level that they think is acceptable or not. And with this, when you then tie on, quite often there's that one blade that's got the slightly smaller diameter that will fit perfectly into the bigger blade at the bottom. And then that smaller blade we would use on our top lip because that's the one that will keep the nice aperture. So I imagine that it would work the same for you, that you could then take that smaller blade, cross it, and use that as your top blade, and it would help people who struggle for stability in their reeds. That it's the reeds will always be better if you use the stronger diameter on your top lip because it's harder to collapse a smaller diameter reed than a big one. And the other one is when finishing a reed, the top blade, and I think it will work with your embouchures as well, if the top blade can somehow be like a hair's breadth longer, it somehow works and vibrates better because of the angle of the reed in the mouth. If the bottom blade is longer, the air kind of has to lip over it, whereas if it's kind of blowing in, that's exaggerating it, but like that, it's a more even tunnel for the air to get blown down.
Yeah, we definitely aim for that when we're clipping that slightly longer top blade, and we kind of think about it like a funnel, right? Funneling the air into the reed. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so there was the other tip that I had for tying on is we discussed it quite often. When you're tying on, you get a bit of soreness or tightness around the finger from the thread off the nylon. So a good 20 years ago now, I liberated an old pair of leather gloves from my mother and chopped off one of the fingers, which I then turned into a tying on thing. So I put that around the finger.
Yeah.
So that I can wrap the thread around that. And then it means that when you have to, pull it a little bit harder or, relax it, you're not cutting through your finger with.
Nice. Yeah, that's a nice little hack.
I do recommend. Yeah, it is. So I do suggest that for people, especially people who pull, a little bit firmer, that it's a safe way of, kind of not shredding your finger and being able to practice later. Because if you cut the blood off your finger, you're not gonna get any F sharps out after that.
Yeah, that will save me a lot of pain. Yeah.
Yeah, do it. And also, no one sees you at home wearing like a kind of inverted Flanaghan style glove, so it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So, what would be useful next?
Well, we had a couple of submitted questions. One of them was people were wondering if you'd ever tried American scraper reeds.
I think I have once upon a time. I think it ended up sounding like a kazoo. I just remember, I remember it being very responsive. I think I tried. There's a chap called James Smith. I think he possibly teaches somewhere in New York.
Yes, James Austin Smith. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it was one of his that I tried, and it's
nice.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Horrendously flat in the second octave.
Yeah.
Did I cut out again? No.
No, you're back. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very flat in the second octave, but the low notes worked like a dream, and it's the beauty is that there are all these different styles of playing and different ways of making reeds. Life would be too boring if it was all the same and people ended up
For sure.
sounding the same. But what I like, the concept of the American reed is the longer the scrape, the more vibrant the reed is. Whereas here, sometimes the problem is, and it can be more extreme with some old colleagues in Germany, they have a very short scrape. We're talking 9 millimeters.
Wow.
And I mean, to get that vibrating, I mean, you need chops of steel. It's
Yeah.
it's brutal. But that gives the uniqueness of the sound between the different countries. And it's something that we mentioned the other day is that I'm not okay with this language of a reed being hard or soft. It's very
Hmm.
much, to me, the reed vibrates or doesn't. And
Yeah.
if you can get a reed vibrating, it doesn't matter if the cane is really soft or really hard. If you find that balance, and it's only you will know individually the strength of the reed that you want. That quite often, a soft reed can be one that is, in theory, vibrating too fast.
Yeah.
And quite often, the hard one is when it's not vibrating, bringing them and finding the vibrations just how you want it, which is why I do basically make the reeds without an instrument, because I just want that feeling of how it vibrates. And if that is kind of right, then you put it in and it will normally sound semi decent. And if it's a bit bright,
Yeah.
it will mellow out within a few days, because the cane will mature when it's been playing and it's getting the saliva on it. It will age it, and then it will kind of turn into a nice reed.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, not putting it into the instrument is so crucial. And it's definitely a step, a lot of younger reed makers, whenever it starts to vibrate at all, you're like, I'm going to put it in the reed and, put it in the instrument and make a sound and then adjust based on what it sounds like. But a lot of times that will get you into trouble later on.
Um, but yeah, so were there any other questions?
Yeah, so there's another question, just about the embouchure, because I think there's some like misconceptions, about either of our embouchures. But kind of people are asking like how tight and or firm is it? And also like my question was how would you describe it or how do you teach it to someone?
Oh God, yeah, this is a bit too hard for a Sunday night.
The tough question. Yeah.
Um, Whatever it is, you do not bite. It doesn't matter if it's an American or a European one. If you bite, it's fatal for the reed, because then you clamp it. So I would say that I'm looking for
Yeah.
to create this kind of space that is, solid on the sides, and kind of stable, but not, again, it's not, tight, it's not clamp, and it's not just, you know, wavy. So, how to describe it? I'm just looking for like a stable basis so that the reed can
Mm.
then vibrate, and I'm not killing the vibrations with the embouchure. So it's basically
Yeah.
um, a shape or an environment that the reed can go in, and the air can just flow through it, and the instrument will speak. So I don't know how to. I
Nice.
mean, I can show like our one is just. So that's all it is. It's just making that same sound as everyone around the world makes on a reed.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I think that's a helpful
Um,
description for because I think yeah.
Sorry, my phone either cut out or you cut out for a sec.
That's great. Yeah, I like that description. I think it helps, like makes it clearer that it's not just like a bunch of pressure on the reed, right? You're still wanting to create a space for it to vibrate, right? Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's the thing. There's no point
yeah,
making a reed that is vibrant and then just clamp it.
yeah,
Um, so it's basically creating kind of the lower lip definitely takes less pressure. So for me, it's the top lip is the kind of decisive factor that I want that reed pressing against the top lip more than the bottom. But as soon as you bite, or as soon as there's a typical thing here for younger players is, you smile with your embouchure. Mm-mm. And it's, yeah, it's something that needs to kind of be
Yeah.
dealt with, and it needs to come down. I mean, we don't have the wonderful of the Americans, with this
Yeah. The
incredible
very
relaxed downward shape.
yeah.
But, we're definitely kind of a downward smile. But yeah, more than that, it's such an individual thing, and it's not like on piano and violin where you can see where someone's holding the instrument or playing on the keys. All of us is inside. Everyone has a different bite. Everyone has different teeth. Everyone has different lips.
Yeah.
There's not a one size fits all. But if you can find the exercises or make the exercises work for you, then yeah, it's a very easy thing, and it's something that just becomes nature. But one thing is really helpful for the embouchure is that you bring the reed to you. You don't go kind of to the reed, so that you're always getting
Mm.
the same spot on the lip. And yeah, it's kind of not too much reed. We wouldn't take um but then I don't think you guys do either.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're yeah. Okay, you're back. It would cut out for a little bit, but um yeah, I was curious if you could talk a little bit about
Oh,
the
sorry about this. I do not know what's going on.
that's okay. We're just too far apart. But
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the yeah, the test that you do on your reads prior to putting it in. Because you showed me them a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll soak one now. Well, I'll try to. But yeah, so when I'm making them, as I said, I try not to. Yeah, I don't put the reeds in the instrument before I finish the reed. Um, I like to have the possibility to have a kind of go from a piano to a forte and back down on the same pitch, and then to go up in semitone increments, just to check that the reed has that flexibility that I'm after. And if it doesn't get up to the kind of higher notes that I need, then it's basically going to be a bit flatter in the second octave than I'd hope for. So depending on what register, I'd either take a tiny bit off the length or play it for a few more days and let it harden up by itself. That's the thing is, again, it's patience. Some
Mm.
just let a reed wait for a couple of days before you clip it. You don't need to clip it because it kind of a few fibers strengthen up, and then you've got far more flexibility because yeah, the lower notes will work better, and then you can kind of yeah soar in the second octave rather than kind of having to lip up or bite. So this will now be the time when the reeds do not work because I haven't played them for about a week. Okay, so this one does crow, but for me, weirdly, I'm less worried about the crow than the feeling of the pitch. So I'd have.
Mm.
So that would be the first test to make sure that I've got a dynamic range. And if the reed does that, I know that I can play loud and soft. I'm probably just popped your eardrum doing that. I'm sorry. Um,
Yeah,
and then
that's okay.
and if the reed can do that, for me, I can put that in the box and know that I can play that and give or take be absolutely fine. And then if something does need, I can do that quite easily next time I'm at my reed making desk. I also, you will never, I mean, I say never, very rarely ever see me with a reed knife at work. I try not to touch reeds at
Oh
work
wow. Okay.
because yeah, part of controlling the environment is having the same light, having like all your same kit, and being. Whereas if I'm, if I'm at my space on stage, the light is going to be, you know, ambient light so that the orchestra looks good on stage, and it's not, shining
Hmm.
down so that you've got that definition of a reed in your hand. So, unless I'm really struggling and a reed has got horrific in the state of a rehearsal,
Yeah.
um, then yeah, I just don't, because quite often our problems are all here, and
Yeah.
it's tension that causes us, and then you take too much out because you're like, oh, I think I'm going to be, yeah, I just, I'm biting, or this note's not working. It's quite often because we're nervous about the concert that,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
we kind of start dropping stuff. So if I know that the reed does all those exercises, I know that in theory everything should be working. So it's probably me. It's not the
Yeah.
reed, it'll be me. But that took a lot of self, finding confidence to do that. Um, yeah, the temptation is because then you feel that you're being proactive. But then if you get on stage and you scrape too much, you're not going to be happy either. So I would always say to try and keep the read, if possible, the same
Yeah.
between general rehearsal and concert, because at least you then know the nature of the beast. And if something isn't quite
Yeah.
working, at least you know that it's just that one thing, rather than a new random thing that you didn't know about, and then suddenly you kind of try and like float up an octave, and the reed just goes like, bye bye, I'm not doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I would hesitate to kind of scrape a reed between rehearsal and concert. So I'd try and do everything at home. It's a hell of a lot easier. Or if I'm tour in the hotel, and then um, yeah, just kind of trust the process to deliver. But one thing I will say that
Yeah.
for the last year especially is that most of us have not had access to our instrument repairers. So it's very likely
Mm, yeah.
that at the moment at home, people's instruments aren't quite balanced or regulated how they should be. So before you scrape the hell out of your reeds, just check that your instruments are actually, yeah, where they need to be, and that the keys are covered.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, if you think, oh, on an English horn, oh my God, my low E is just not working on any reeds, maybe check the instrument before you go and scrape more out of the heart to kind of get that easier access to a low note. Because
Yeah.
yeah, we end up ruining a lot of nice reeds because an instrument isn't actually regulated. So get on FaceTime to your repairers and have them speak you through
Yeah.
which keys you need to adjust and how.
Yeah, definitely. There are also some like adjustment little books, and there's definitely some resources online. So even just like searching like, putting your oboe into adjustment, you might find some guides online about doing that. Yeah, and it's such a great skill to be able to have, as an oboist. I think every oboist should know how to do that. Um, and it's so important
Yeah,
for making good reads. Yeah.
don't tell that to my instrument repairer.
Yeah.
His view
Yeah.
was
That's fair.
uh, screwdriver. If you have one that is too soft or too hard, you will end up ruining all the screw heads. So yeah, that is a bit of kit worth having. Would I be able to say
Yeah.
what is the finish
So
length of
someone
the
asked a
reeds and
question.
how long? Yeah, so on oboe, I tie on at 75 and I finish at about 73. On oboe, the camera's not great, is it? That scrape is about 12 millimeters and the tip is about 2.5. So I have quite a long scrape and quite a long tip, but that enables me to have the reed vibrating how I would like. And, as I've discussed, everyone does have, different physiology. And yeah, for my teeth and lips, kind of that length tip on an oboe reed enables me to have the response that I need. On English horn, I use a narrower shape than many and a short. So I tie 55 with a millimeter scrape, and again about 2.5 or 3 millimeter tip, depending on how it's vibrating.
Nice. Yeah, that's fascinating. Another submitted question, it was how is adjusting short scrape reeds different from adjusting, long scrape reeds?
So yeah, we kind of brainstormed on this the other night and agreed to disagree. So
yeah.
Here, the kind of rule of thumb is that if you scrape the kind of tip, so if you thin out the tip, it will make the reed harder because you're slowing down the vibrations. Whereas if you scrape from the back forwards, the reed will get easier because you are reducing the resistance. So in theory, that should be the same both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Did you just lose that all?
Yeah, it's definitely I saw that. But that's definitely something we consider, but I think generally people think, if it's not light enough, take a little bit out of the tip. But there are instances where, maybe the heart or plateau is too thick, so you do need to like go back there and take some off. And I was also thinking about what you were saying, and there is you can scrape off the very, very tip of the tip, and that can reduce vibrations, which is what you're saying, like it will, make it harder. So I think there are instances where that's definitely the case. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think whilst we're in this domain, we can talk about these little boys, the
Yes.
plaques.
Yeah.
So my main bug there is people scraping their whole reed. The gouge. If you look at that plaque, there is, and you could crack the cane.
It's cutting out a little bit.
Will protect the cane when you're scraping it and will hopefully create better reeds.
So I think sorry, it cut out for some of that, but what you were saying is that it's dangerous to scrape the whole reed on a flat plaque because it can create issues with cracking and collapsing the reed. So that contoured plaques, like you were saying, can kind of protect the curvature.
It does because when we have a bit of gouge cane, you have that lovely curvature. You want to protect that, and ideally when we're scraping, we want to kind of follow the contours of the gouge. So you don't, the whole point of the gouge is that it's thicker in the middle and thinner in the sides, so that when we scrape, you're having to do less work around the cane. And my problem is if you scrape on a flat plaque, immediately you put the knife down, just that little bit of pressure bends the gouge down, which means you're going to take out more cane than necessary. So I would wholly recommend for the main part of the reed using one of these, and then only for the tip to use a flat metal one. Regarding the tip, from my experience, the best tips of a reed, and to keep the aperture, the center of the tip would be a bit thicker than the sides. Just again, to try and follow that contour, and then it will just keep the stability of the reed. I think I described to you those children's toys, the kind of, giraffe on a box where you press the button underneath and the giraffe just kind of collapses. And when it's got the string back, it comes upright. And with reeds, we need to keep that strength in the skeleton of the, which is our gouge. We need to keep as much of that there as possible so that the reed stays open, and can be played for a long time, because yeah, the better the aperture, the longer that reed will last. Because if it collapses, you will not be able to play on that for a long time comfortably.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your use of wire. I know you said you
Yeah,
don't use it typically on oboe reeds.
yeah. So I don't ever wire oboe reeds. I've just never have. My professor in Germany, Emmanuel Abul, he would always put a single loop of wire and would just have it hanging down on the reed. And if he felt the reed going in a concert, he would just slide it up, and it would just give his reed that stability. I tried this for a while, and I just don't think my reeds were either good enough, or I'm just not as good an oboist as him.
Mm.
And the difference didn't make it didn't make any difference to me. But on him, yeah, he would just need the maximum out of every reed. If that meant just a tiny loop with a few rings. So we're not talking about forcing the reed open, but just, having it a bit more stable, then it's good. But on English horn, I always wire
Yeah.
my reeds. I've had too many experimental phases because that's the thing, we start oboe at a young age. Everything's laid on the plate. Everyone plays the oboe. Then you get to English horn, and it's like no one really helps you choose an instrument. You just blag it on a shape and a crook, and then suddenly you've got to play
Yeah.
a concert, and none of it works, or you're just readjusting. So I found that although the reed sounded really nice without a wire, it would just be painful playing, because I was having to lip stuff up, or I was having to bite in the low register. And by putting on a wire, it just stabilized the second octave and meant I could relax in the lower register. But the caveat is, Logan has told me that you only have, 3 millimeters of bark on an English horn reed in the States.
Yeah.
Yeah,
3 to 5 millimeters. Sometimes
yeah.
on English
Where
horn, it's a little bit more, might be upwards of 6 or 7, but yeah, not a whole lot. Not a lot of space down there.
Yeah, whereas, I have, I have bark until there. So I have a wire that's after about 5 millimeters, and I only use thin oboe wire because I don't want to kind of clamp the reed open. It's just there to kind of keep the blades steady and get the vibrations how I want. Um, and yeah, I can't imagine playing without a wire on an English horn reed anymore. And there's been no problem with them not vibrating. I get the sound and the effect that I want. So I think a lot of these things is you have to do what works for you. You have to, like teachers or, people you listen to or respect, we don't have to play for you. So you have to find what works for you. And the only way to do that is to kind of try out these different things in different scenarios, and settle upon what, with what you're happiest.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, I totally agree. And you also put gold beater skin around your
Yeah.
English horn. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and the difference between that and plumber's tape.
Okay. So although the aim is when I tie on that the reeds are all airtight when they're a blank, sometimes when the cane dries out, you know, however sharp the knife is, however well you've shaped, sometimes there's like, a little bit has kind of missed out, or, you know, the blades have moved as the cane settles, and it's not completely, and that's not a problem, because as long as it's then airtight when it's scraped, then it's fine. But I always put gold beaters on because I just want I want the reeds to all basically be the same. And if I leave it off one and leave a wire off the other, then I'm taking away percentages. The reason I use gold beaters
Yeah.
is that it can dry out. So, the skin can get wet, the cane can get wet underneath. But when I leave that in my case, it's not going to rot. The problem for me with plumber's tape or cling film is that they are, you know, heavy duty to stop water getting in or out. So the problem is when you're playing, it's great out, then leave it in your bottle that the water stays underneath, you know, stay underneath there, and that will start rotting. So it'll be incredibly green, and you know that will end up damaging the cane or causing, you know, a bit of rot. So if you're going to use plumber's tape or cling film, I would suggest you replace it basically every day so that the cane can dry out.
Nice. Yeah, that's great advice. And I think something a lot of people don't think about or even know that, that the fish skin is not water, it doesn't allow water out. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a kind of lovely membrane, and yeah, it's a natural substance, well, I mean, as natural as getting it out of these animals is. But for me, it evens out the plastic use of straws. So
yeah,
it's something good for the environment in comparison.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that's all the submitted questions we had. Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on?
I mean, it was just from listening to others and kind of hearing issues that people have been having. It was just particularly around, it seemed that everyone had questions for others about reeds that are not open and they're collapsing. And, I firmly believe that the gouge is the most important part of reed making. If you get that right, everything else will follow on. So I've tried to select a bit of cane here to show, and this will hopefully. So I think you can see with this that it's pretty much straight from here to here, and then it's got a kind of upward curve. So if that is going to be 12, I'm going to take out about that much. The problem is that one end is curved. So this reed, if I use that, when it's tied on and opened up, it's going to go like that. Whereas if I took the other side, that bit, the reed is going to do the opposite. It's going to stay closed because the natural bend on the reed is into each other when it's folded. So that's why it's so important, in gouging, is to leave the cane, if possible, once it's been pre-gouged, to see how it reacts and to see if it stays flat or if it kind of curves up, curves down, or, sometimes it does that. If the cane is curved like that one, when you take a slice out and flatten it out, sometimes one corner will lift and the other will go down. So the reed is going to naturally cross itself. So it's controlling the gouging part and basically making, staying as consistent as you can. So if you're doing a 10.5, to really try and get the whole 7.5 centimeters of that gouge cane at 10.5, so that when you tie it on, hopefully now using a straw, it's going to revolutionize everyone's tying on.
it will. Yeah.
That you can then, tie that on and just have the security that 10.5 is staying. And then, if you make a reed slowly and just come back to it, it will keep the aperture much better than if you scrape it, try and play, and then scrape it. So, I mean, the key word for me is patience with reed making. Just, trust yourself that it will be worth the extra weight and everything. And, use this kind of continued lockdown to, just make, say, 5 reeds, but from this process where you pre-gouge, leave it for 2 or 3 days, then put it in water for 24 hours, then shape it back in water for another 24, tie it on, and then leave it for a week, and then come at it and scrape it, and scrape from the top down. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And see,
definitely.
and if that doesn't solve collapsing issues, then you're scraping too much out of the middle of the reed, and it just loses all stability. But
Yeah.
I would be amazed if people didn't get better results by just being a bit more patient with the wood.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely going to try your process. Yeah, because I'm curious how it'll affect everything. Yeah, I'm excited to try it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, give me some feedback as to if that actually works for you or not. But I'd be
I
surprised if
will.
it
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining me today. I learned a lot, and I loved hearing about your process and like little tips and tricks. And like I said, I'm excited to try it. And yeah, I think people learned a lot from this. So thank you.
no, thanks for having me. And I'm just sorry that it seems to have been cutting out every few minutes. It's typical. Just you need to
Yeah.
do this, and then the
Yeah, of
internet
course. Yeah.
decides to play. But yeah, no, thank you, and I hope
Yeah.
yeah, I hope that's brought some help to people. And if not, the next person will.
Definitely.
Um,
No, it was definitely
yeah,
a lot of help. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Patrick, and I hope you take care, and we'll keep in touch.
absolutely. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.